I hope everybody had a good weekend. I'm uh, recording this tonight. Uh, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. What I was trying to say is, I hope everybody had a good weekend. And this is one of the last 3 weeks we're going to be together. Next week, I think, is a regularly scheduled broadcast. And then our final is the week after that. And on that week, what I'm going to be doing is Wednesday night, I will record this. But if you watch it, you'll get points for watching it. And if you don't, you're not going to lose any points. You're not going to get a zero. You just won't get any points for it. So it'll essentially be an extra credit. I did want to go through the final and show you guys what that entails. I am, again, having a little bit of an issue. I tried to resolve it with tech support people. We weren't able to fix it. That is sharing so that I can control what is shared. It looks like when I share, I can only share my full screen right now instead of sharing the different tabs or windows I want to share with you. And that makes it a little bit problematic. This week, we did not get any more PowerPoints or critiques. I want to remind people we have about 4 or 5 more PowerPoints that need to be turned in that we can share. And we have about 6 or 7 more of the critiques. And I'm sorry, 6 or 7 more people need to turn in the critiques. And those critiques, there's 2 critiques. One is a peer critique and one is a self critique. And I want to remind people what those are. The PowerPoint is the 7 slides that you've made about the artist that you picked way back in module 7.A that you did a annotated bibliography on in 7.B. And I think we do have about 3 or 4 of those still that people need to do. The peer and self-critiques are when you use the 4 tools of artistic critique to critique somebody else's work and then one of your own works. The peer critique is when you do that and critique, you use the 4 tools of artistic critique to critique somebody else's work that was done for this class this semester. It can't be just a random artist. It needs to be one of the students in this class this semester who shared their work on one of the discussion boards that we have. And I've shared examples of that. And last week I sent everybody the playlist for those that are all completed. The self-critique is the same thing, except for your own work done for one of the projects for this class this semester. I have to be really clear about that because it's not always self-evident. When we start talking about it has to be for our work done for this class this semester, then it becomes pretty clear what you need to do. You're not, and in the critiques that we're doing, I'm not interested in having anybody say what the person needs to improve. That's not what we're talking about. The critiques that you're doing are using the 4-step model that I have outlined several different times, and we've talked about it. I'm going to do a screen share really quickly so you can see where that is. And I'll just talk about that briefly. And then the next thing I want to do is talk about not just the final, but also the, I think they're called SRIs. Okay, I hope that this is okay. All right, if you go to, this is our regular class, and we have attendance there, module 1, module 7.8, this is where you pick your artist that you're doing the further research on. Then applying the tools of artistic critique. We go to that. And this is where I talk about the 4 tools of artistic critique. This is where those tools are outlined very clearly. There's a little bit of a quiz here. It's worth 17 whole points. This is something you can click on that shows some of the critiques in previous classes. And then these are the two critiques that you need to submit. We'll go here, my own work. It is a 3 to 5 minute long critique where you just show the artwork that you're critiquing so that you're off camera. And we have already had a couple people who, or at least one person who used AI as their voice. And that's fine because they wrote the critique down themselves. And this is a demonstration of that by two art historians at a museum. But they go back to the attendance for last week and look at the two playlists for examples. But you're just going to spend 3 to 5 minutes, so it's about almost a minute that you're talking about the artwork with each of the, and you're spending about a minute for each of the four tools, which are describe, analyze, interpret, and evaluate. And again, at no point, it looks okay, 5 people have done this. So we still have 8 more people that need to do this. At no point am I asking you to, in your evaluation, tell the person how they can improve it. All we're doing is you're evaluating for whether or not you feel that the artwork is successful. And as I mentioned last week, when you do your own work, again, you do not have to show yourself on camera. When you do your own work, it works best if you pretend that you've never seen it before and you don't know who does it. Somebody who watched the class last week, we had watched one of the videos. One of the videos we watched was the self critique, and they mentioned that they thought it was pretty obvious that it was their own work because they knew way too much about the materials. And when you're doing the critique on your own work, if you pretend that you have no idea whose it is and it's the first time you've seen it, then you can talk about just the stuff that is visible. And I think I've had students in the past cry when they critique their own work because they realize, you know what, I really do punish myself when I don't need to, and I am doing a really good job. I want you guys all to experience that because you're in a university that is rarefied as it is. You're in a pretty small group of people going to university to learn how to make art, and so you've already proven that you're successful artists just by getting into the university, and I want you to respect your own work. Then this is the second one, 3 to 5 minute long video where you are critiquing using those four tools: describe, analyze, interpret, and evaluate somebody else's artwork. That's what that assignment is. And I have talked about making sure that it's artwork that was done for this class this term, because I've actually had people try to get away with critiquing their own work from previous semester just because they really, really liked it. And that's not what we're doing. All right, now we're going to talk about this Mighty Voltron sculpture revisit. We're also going to talk about contemporary art. But before we get there, I want to talk about the final. And I want to see if I've written this pretty clear. Okay. On the first day of finals, I will publish the questions and email everybody. You will have the full week to reflect and respond to the final. The final is not a cumulative test of any sort. It is not a test. What it is, a collection of 4 essay questions, and we will talk about them in just a moment. But they are 4 essay questions that directly address your own experience. So you cannot do this with AI. It has to be your own words. And if you have a hard time articulating it, I have had people go through the questions with a roommate or a friend, and then after they have talked with a friend about it, then they do the writing. And that's perfectly fine. We'll talk more about that in just a second. But if you do not turn in the final, according to the department mandate, and I have mentioned this in the syllabus, you can lose up to a full letter grade. So don't skip the final. Do not skip the final. Now here it says to due date. This is when you have to read it by. Okay, and I will double check all the dates and everything like that. If you guys have any discrepancies with dates, let me know as soon as you can. All right. I'm not worried about dates for getting your other projects and stuff turned in, other than all quizzes and all discussions must be done before midnight on the last day of finals, because that's when Canvas shuts down and you won't be able to do it. Anything else, if you need a little bit more time, you can email the files to me as long as you tell me beforehand. All right. So that's a little bit about the final, and I'll double check the dates. Then there is something else I want you to know about. Everybody should have gotten an email from the university for something called the SRI for each of the classes that you're taking this term. The SRI is a student review program, and if you do it, you can get some extra credit, and it is 2% of whatever your final score is for the class. And most of the time, that is enough to bump people up a half letter grade. So if you are getting a B, a solid B, and your grade is at 86.7 or whatever, with that 2% bump, it'll bring it up to 88.7, and you will be getting a B plus. So it is a 2% bump that is an increase from your final numeric percentage. All right, so let's go to, so this is just talks about the final. And the online final, this is going to be different, and this is going to be different. I'm going to change the dates right now. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to go and find the UVU summer term academic calendar. (2026). See what it says. Okay, general dates, admissions, deadlines, registration, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Okay, I'm seeing that it is official term end date is August 7th, which I thought meant that our finals okay. All right, we will not be meeting. I have our schedule for August. I have our last get together on Wednesday, August 12th. That is not the case. Our last get together will be next Wednesday. So that is Wednesday, August 5th. I'm so glad I checked that, because I thought we had another week, and it's not because of anybody's fault other than my own. So what that means is you guys have until next Sunday to get everything finished and turned in. Do your quizzes and your discussions before August 7th. So I'm going to do the screen share again. Okay. So I'm gonna change the date on this really quick. To August 7th. Okay. And we'll come back to this just a second, and we'll talk more about the SRI. And then we are going to talk about and I want to talk about the online final right now. I'm going to edit this. I mean, you guys have all been doing really, really well. There's just a couple things that need to be finished. And okay, there's a couple things that need to be finished. And I think you guys are on track. I think you guys are doing a great job. Okay, so I just changed some dates, and I'm going to say save. Now I'm going to talk about this. So we have a week and a half to get everything done, which means I will finish. I've been grading stuff as stuff has been turned in. I do not have um, everything graded, but I will get that done by tomorrow night, so everybody knows exactly where they are. And a lot of the things are just a couple points that need to be done here and there. But I do need everybody to go through and make sure that they've turned in everything. Turn in everything you possibly can. And if we look over here at the schedule, my grades, I have to turn everything in by Wednesday, August 12th at 5 o'clock. I've got to get those turned in by then. So what that means for us is you guys can have until this next Sunday, and that is August 9th, to turn everything in, with a couple exceptions. First is Canvas will shut down midnight August 7th. That means that you need to get all your discussions and all your quizzes done before midnight Friday, August 7th. If you need to turn in other projects and other things that are not quizzes and not discussions, you can email those clearly labeled to me up through Sunday night. All right? If you need more time than that, you talk to me, let me know, and I will do whatever I can to help you guys out. Now, and then I'm showing this on the screen so we can go through and you guys know what the final is. Now, I do have this. It's available from August 3rd until August 7th. I'm going to go ahead and publish this right now, and I will be emailing people every day next week, Monday through Friday, to remind you. And there's a couple things I want you to know about the final. One is this is not a test. These are 4 questions that you are going to be answering with at least 75 words that are personal reflections. You cannot use AI for this because it has to be your own thoughts. And the word count does not include the question. Okay, it has to be 75 words for each in the answer for each of these questions. And we're going to go through and talk about each of the 4 questions. So 75 words total, or 75 words for each of the 4 questions, which gives us at least 300 words that you're going to be writing. But notice that I say answer of at least 75 words. That's for each question, because if you answer 65 words on one and 85 words on the next, the 85 one will be just fine, but you'll be docked points for the 65 word one because it's too short. You need to be at least the minimum word count. All right. Now, the 4 questions are: first, what was your greatest challenge in this course? And it can be an issue you're finding out or that you had to deal with, or it can be one of the projects or one of the other things that, and you just talk about that for 75 words. Greatest challenge. What was your greatest success? Talk about that for 75 words. And this cannot be the same as number 1. Let's see. I'm going to add that in here. I'll write in here. Okay. Actually, no, I'm not going to write that in. We talked about it. I think that'll be good. Okay. Come down here, cancel. Okay. So first question, what is your greatest challenge in the course? Second, what is your greatest success in the course? Both of these answers need to be at least 75 words. Correct spelling, correct punctuation, correct uh, sentence structure. All right. Number three, which project process was the greatest surprise to you and why? Then it says the surprise can be a project or technique you didn't expect to do in this course, or a project that went in a completely different direction than what you were planning or expecting, or how applying the tools of artistic critique to something completely transformed your perspective. In whatever you want to talk about, whatever was the biggest surprise to you. And that answer also has to be at least 75 words. And then what one principle will you take from this course and use in your future career as an artist? Also at least 75 words. Now, what makes my final different than everybody else's is every day, at least twice a day, throughout all next week, I will be grading the finals that I see that pop up. And as soon as I do, you will see the points. If it is lower than the full points of 50, I will give notes as to why it was. And most often, that's because somebody did 65 words or they didn't meet the word count in each of the four answers. That when I do that, when I grade it, you have again until Friday at midnight to make the corrections that you need to and resubmit. All right, you can take the final 3 or 4 times if you want to during the course of the week. I don't care, as long as it's in you've done the resubmits and everything like that by Friday midnight or Friday at 11:59 p.m. All right. Now, I do that for a couple reasons, but the main one is a lot of the times we get excited, we turn stuff in before it's completely done. And if the word count isn't there, that, like I said, that is the most common reason people miss points. And you have time, if you turn this in Monday or Tuesday, you have plenty of time to fix it before the end of the final. All right. And I want you guys to know that and understand that so you can take care of it. But like I said, I will grade everything. I will be checking the final for grading twice a day, every day of finals week, which is Monday through Friday. All right. Now, nobody is here tonight, so I don't have any questions. If you do have any questions, let me know. But we will meet for our last time next Wednesday. Next Wednesday is in the middle of finals week, and it will not be a required meeting time. If you do watch the recording or come, you'll get extra credit. If you don't watch the recording or come to it, you're not going to lose any points. All right. So just so everybody knows about that. There is a rubric that you guys can look at for this final and see what's going on, but pay attention to this. Again, if you miss the final, if you get a 0 on it, you're not just losing out on 50 points, but according to department mandate, you can lose an entire letter grade. In all the years that I've worked at UVU, I have only had to do that 3 times. And that's over hundreds of students. Pretty much everybody has done the final. I've only had to drop a full letter grade about 3 times. So take the final. And if you wait on it, sit on it until the last minute, and you don't do a very good job, at least you've taken it, and at least you get the points for it. But I hope you guys understand how important this is. Just 4 questions. Right here, I say this: completing this final is vital to this course. As per department mandate, if this final is not turned in, it will result in the loss of a full letter grade. To this end, let me know if you are having issues with the time. If you have any issues with connectivity too, let me know. You can text me or email me. And we will do everything possible to make sure you get this final assignment turned in. I'll be grading these throughout finals week as I see them come in. So if you need to, you have an opportunity to resubmit if you resubmit early enough during finals. All right. So if anybody has any questions about this, email me or text me right away, and I will answer in an email to the entire class so everybody knows. All right. So I have published the final, but you will not have access to it until August 3rd. And you will not be able to turn it in until August 3rd. So that's what the final is. Now, everything else that people have been doing has been pretty good. Oh wow. Okay. I'm saying oh wow because it says 4 more assignments. I mean, people have been turning stuff in while we've been talking. Critique my own work. That just got turned in now, just a little while ago. So people are turning stuff in. That is great. Now, I was hoping that we would have some people on this live so we could look at some of these assignments and you guys could see what I'm seeing as we move forward. And I haven't graded these because I wanted to look at them before I graded them. And it's going to be a little bit tricky going back and forth and looking at these things. I'm going to do the best I can. So this right here is the cocoon, colorful cocoon or wrapped object. And we have several things that have been turned in, and we're going to talk about each one. Now this person, it looked like they took something out of the Jason Lanigan playbook and did wrap some sticks. And I think the individual stick wrapping is really interesting. But I will tell you, there's a couple things that I think this person needs to address, and I would prefer that they address it before I grade it. But if not, they can do it later on. The photography is interesting to me. It is on a wall, it looks like, and I'm not really a fan of this hanging right here. And what I'm wondering is, if you're going to do it on a wall, and something like this on a wall, it might make sense to do something like if it is your own home. If it's not, then you really can't do this. But use a hook to hang it on so that we can't see the hook. Like there's a monkey hook that goes in, or just a little framing nail in the wall, and you can patch and paint over it later. Or if you have anything hanging up in your apartment already, you can hang it on there. The reason I say that is because this string right here that is suspending it is distracting, because we see the string and the shadow of the string. It doesn't really help with the piece. One thing I do like about the piece is that we have lots of these colorful areas. But something that I stressed in the assignment description is that you have to significantly change the profile or the silhouette of the piece. We talked about that quite a bit last week as well. So what that means is we can see that each of these are sticks still. The profile, the silhouette themselves has not been changed. Now the shadow is really interesting in the photograph, but for this, what I would recommend is, if you want that color to remain on the sticks, use some either clear fishing line or some saran wrap, plastic wrap, and wrap these sticks together with that. And you can wrap it tightly right here in the center, and then go in between things with the plastic wrap and do different things with that. But the silhouette of the sticks has to be significantly changed. And one of the things, I think I said 85%. So what I like about, there are several things that I really like about this. I like the care, all the different colors. That is absolutely beautiful, and that's why I'm saying do the plastic wrap, because that will significantly change the silhouette of the object, and you'll still be able to get a lot of the colors in. Another way to do that is wrap enough yarn around these so that it makes each of these sticks a lot thicker and changes their shape, and then tie them together. So there's a couple different ways. This is an example of one of those things where I like what's going on, but it doesn't quite fit with the assignment, and that's why we got to make a change. Okay, got it. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to get to the next object, and then we're going to look at that one. All right, let's see. Okay. I think one of the things that's frustrating for a lot of art students, and this is just because you're really smart and you're good at what you do. I mean, but it is frustrating. One thing that is frustrating is when we do stuff, when we have assignments, and you may not like what the assignment is, but you still got to do the assignment. Now, this I think is a really good example of the cocooning one. We've got several different objects. There are, I think this is better. There's some more that I would do to it still. I really like this, attached to it with string, these objects attached to it. I think that's really interesting. I like how these are brought together. And saran wrap or plastic wrap is used. The difference between the previous one and this one is that the previous one, all the elements were wrapped, so we couldn't, see exactly what they were, but the overall shape of the silhouette was still the same. Here, the silhouette is a little bit is different, but we can see right through the clear. And so the cocooning is, even with the ironing board that we looked at, where they used almost entirely saran wrap, they used enough of it so you couldn't really see through it too well. What I would say with this one is I would like them to use quite a bit more saran wrap to go over this, so we can't tell the teddy bear's face right away and stuff like that, and wrap it enough so that maybe just a little bit pokes through. But if you put on, this is just a single layer of saran plastic wrap, and it doesn't hide very much. Um, again, we're trying to significantly change this. I would say another 3 layers of plastic wrap is going to make this so that it's going to be look a lot more surreal and difficult to identify. The photography of it is absolutely beautiful. So I would say wrap another 3 layers of saran wrap on this, and then go over it again with the yarn and ribbon, and that's going to get it there. It's going to look really freakishly unusual. It's going to bring up all sorts of vibes of both Judah Scott and Jean-Claude Christo, and it's going to satisfy all the parameters eh, of the assignment. So I think that will get it to work. Okay, now I'm going to want to go to another one. And I want to stress that these people that we're looking at, their work that we're looking at today, they were very brave in doing this because they're the first ones, and it's hard to know exactly what this assignment entails when you are the first ones to do it. So good for them doing that. Okay, here we are with the next one. And again, I am critiquing these in relationship to the parameters of the assignment, not to the value of the art itself. All right, now this one I think is an excellent start. And what I love about this is you look at this leg and this leg, that is great. And what started going on here is looking good. For this, and the photography is good. It looks like they have an infinity screen and everything. This is, it looks like it's leaning against something, but I think the photography is pretty good. For this, the silhouette is changed a bit, and I like what's going on with this leg here and this arm here. But I believe, well, in order to fit the parameters of the assignment, we've got to change that silhouette even more. What I would recommend doing is perhaps going over the hair so that this is completely wrapped to the head. So all we see is maybe one eye and one tuft of hair. And I would wrap this so much so that maybe we only see the fingers of one of the hands. And then we start getting to that parameters where we have changed 85% of the silhouette. I think this is an excellent start. I just think I just see that it needs a little bit more wrapping, and then it will be there. So, making the hair a solid object connected to the head, so we only see an eye and maybe a tuft of hair, or even no eye at all, where it just becomes one mass and that loops around and maybe onto the torso as well, and just a little bit of tuft of hair. Maybe leave this arm and that hand alone, but with the purple, make this so that the silhouette is dramatically changed and maybe connected a little bit. Make this so that everything here is dramatically changed. So maybe this looks like a sausage or something different. And I think that would do it on that. I'm seeing if we have any more. One of the pitfalls of this is people will loosely wrap something and not really um, engage with, this needs to be cocooned, not just loosely wrapped. And okay, so here's our next one. All right, so here's now this one. This is really interesting. I really like how this is photographed, but this is an example of, this looks like it's a very small object that is loosely wrapped with saran wrap. And to fulfill the parameters of the assignment, this really needs to be cocooned. And this thing that I did talk about last week, not just loosely wrapped. Um, a couple years ago, somebody submitted an assignment where they just took 12 pieces of tape and looped over the top of something and said, "Oh yeah, it's all cocooned." Well, no, it's not. This is wrapped. It's not cocooned. We're talking about a cocoon. What I would suggest for this one would be, if this is the object you're going to use, because it seems really, really tiny, then go over this and wrap it with string really tight, just the way it is. Then go over, wrap that with plastic wrap, then wrap it with string again, and do that several times until the silhouette is larger and a lot different than what you started out with. And then it will fulfill the parameters of the assignment. But I think that this is a good start, because it just does start to change this. But I know all of you guys are professional artists, and you can put more energy into it. So that's what I would suggest for this one. Do several layers back and forth of different materials, and it will transform into something that is very different. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to look at is Readymades. And I want to go through each of these and we'll talk about them. And again, I am not talking, I'm evaluating all of these assignments by how they relate to the parameters of the assignment, not whether or not you're any good as an artist. We know you are in a university. The selection process is not an easy one to get through. We know that you are here and you are professional and you deserve to be here. So we're not evaluating your art. We are evaluating these according to the parameters of the assignment. So I want people to remember that. Okay, so doing another screen share. Okay. All right, so this is the object that they're doing. And I would say when you turn this in, it might be a good idea to make this image as big as you can on the paper, because then it becomes more dramatic. Now, when I first saw this, it frustrated me because I've talked to everybody about the infinity screen, doing all these things. You need to show respect for your object. But one of the parameters of this assignment is to put some thought into the photograph. And I think with this, it's an upside down mug with a dark brown stripe and a white stripe. This line doesn't feel to me like it detracts from the image. I think it works with this in this case. So we're going to go through. So this is a plain ceramic coffee mug. Remember, for this, it's three paragraphs where you talk about the original context, the new context you're giving it, and why you feel it's justified as a work of art. The object I selected is a plain ceramic coffee mug, originally designed to hold stuff. Okay, so they talk about that. The piece is called Silent Bell. So I think it looks like a bell, but obviously it can't ring. Yeah, they put it upside down. Now that has the name Silent Bell has the same relationship to this upside down mug as the fountain did to the urinal, or very similar, that Marcel Duchamp used. Now, in the quiz, somebody said, taking the quiz, that Marcel Duchamp used previously made objects as part of their art. In the answer where it was, what is a ready-made and who pioneered the use of them? And that isn't quite what a ready-made is. A found object is used within your art. Like Fran Crow, her stuff in the quiz is she finds things, puts them in a little baggie, and that's her art. Selling it as souvenirs. The difference is a ready-made is its own object. This is presented as its own object. We're given a new context through the title and the way it's photographed. That's what makes it ready-made. It's not part of something else. It's not part of a larger art piece or anything like that. When a previously constructed piece of material is used in part of a larger art piece, then it's called a found object. When it's used by itself as its own thing, then it's a ready-made. And that's what the difference is. And this person goes on and says, it follows the idea of a ready-made object because I didn't change the object itself. I did change how it was presented and interpreted with the title. So I think this person knows what's going on and is showing that they know what's going on. So I think that's a good example of a ready-made. So let's go. We'll find some more here. As we do this and move forward, I want to remind people again, get everything that you have to submit via Canvas done right away so that before Friday at midnight, so you can submit it through Canvas. And that is discussions and quizzes. They have to be done. Now, for people who need to get points for submitting answers on the discussions and stuff like that, you're not going to be docked points when you've done your part and nobody else has submitted stuff. But what that also means is you guys have got to submit the stuff to the discussion right away. We need at least 2 more pieces submitted right away. And if you want a good grade in the class, submit everything that you got, submit it all. Okay, now this one is another example of a photograph without an infinity screen. And I'm not going to complain too much about it because I think that's okay in that it echoes right here in the object itself. So let's see what it's saying. The object I selected already had sentimental value to me, but would be absolutely ordinary to anyone else. Now this kind of pushes the bounds of the Readymades. If you guys watched the videos that I had you watch about Marcel Duchamp talking about the Readymades, one of the things he said was it was absolutely essential that he has no emotional attachment to the object. And so this pushes the edge of that. but they do say it would be absolutely ordinary to anyone else. Okay, it is an old worn envelope that has my sister's handwriting on the front, and its original purpose was a simple one, just to protect the letter. The letter is gone. I can't remember what the letter was about, and the nature of an envelope is typically temporary. And usually thrown away, but I kept this one through all the years. So it's becoming separated from an ordinary envelope. I have decided to name this Ready-Made Sisterly Affection Preserved. The envelope is presented by itself on a white pedestal. So that's why there's that line there, because it's on a pedestal. Okay, that makes sense. The photograph is a good one. The crumpled paper and worn edges help to tell a story. In faded writing, you see the words to my Hannah, love, Amy. The beauty of the piece is that we don't know what the letter says. Well, the letter's gone, but there are hints about the relationship because of the envelope itself. So there's some really interesting things going on here, and the fact that this is presented on a pedestal as well. The letter is upright; it's not flat, so it's being presented as its own art object. I think this is sounding like it's qualifying as a ready-made. The envelope is now art because it is being viewed in a new context. And I think a big part of that is the context is that it's shared with other people that don't know the history of the letter. You know, it looks like an ordinary object, but now it's being presented on a pedestal. The meaning itself, the context, all those things are being changed. Oh no. Okay. I thought I was sharing this and I'm not. So we're gonna change that. I'm sorry about that. Okay, here's the envelope. Here's the photo. I'm talking about the photograph. It's on a pedestal. I usually don't like that horizontal line there because I don't think it shows respect to your artwork. It's detracting. But in this case, the person mentions it's on a pedestal. So this photograph is completely appropriate. And then, I said some other things about how it's standing upright. But you can see it is an old worn envelope with some scribbled writing on it. And it typically something that we would throw away. But in this case, it's held upright, it's on a pedestal, it's presented professionally, and it does change what it is. So I think this is valid as a ready-made. I think they did a good job with it. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, and before talking about the next one, I'm going to do what I can to remember. Okay. All right, this next one. Okay, this next one I can't really share with you. Oh, okay, because it doesn't. Well, I'm going to share it to you with you, but this does not fit the parameters of the assignment. So right now, this will get a 0 because it does not fit the parameters of the assignment. The parameters of the assignment are to do your own ready-made. That's what we talked about last week. That's what the assignment talks about. And this person did not understand that. So they do get an opportunity to resubmit. And I'll show you why this does not fit. They're giving a report about this ready-made that is already made. Okay, that does not count as for a grade for this object. And they're saying Three Musketeer chairs. They're trying to make the argument that by representing this, it is a new ready-made, and that's not going to work. The ready-made needs to be your own object, photographed and recontextualized by you. So this will not work. Um, so this person will need to rework this and resubmit. I think it's an interesting idea, and if they can, if they want to, maybe argue that a little bit with me, it'll be interesting to hear what they have to say. But um, as it is, it you can't present somebody else's ready-made as your ready-made. And the reason, this is Joseph Kosuth, it's a conceptual piece of art. It is somebody else's artwork, and one of the parameters for the ready-made is that it needs to be an object, an ordinary object. So that's two different reasons why it can't be used. So, but that's a very interesting idea. So that person who submitted that, please go back and find an object that you can recontextualize and present as a ready-made. Um, for the Joseph Kosuth one, some of the things that can be done to present that as a ready-made for the purposes of this assignment would be a photograph of that, where the photograph itself, something is done to it, and the photograph itself is recontextualized. And I don't really know how a person could do that. But as it is, it's not going to work. Okay. But I'm really glad that you turned that in, because it gave us an opportunity to talk about it. And I did appreciate the writing. Okay, so now we're going to look at some of these objects that people turned in. We looked at several examples last week, and I think that this is a really good start. And you see that they did do a lot of interesting things with the color. When we're doing, one of the things I mentioned last week is gluing things on here and there does not count as giving it texture. One thing I do like is this wire coming out. I think that that's a really fun addition. That's very cool. And this is not an infinity screen. It's, that line is a little bit distracting, and we want to focus on this object. But for the purposes of the assignment, when we talk about texture and things like that, some of the things that I would consider for this person is this texture right here that's starting is really fascinating to me. And for the purposes of the assignment, like we talked about last week, what I would recommend is taking this material, and it looks like it's basically colored glue, and I would make patches, do parallel lines so we can really see that texture. A single line does not give a texture. It gives something that's interesting to look at, but it's not a texture. I would say doing parallel lines and building this up so we can see that glue as texture, that would do it. That would be very interesting. So I remove some of these things, and I would start applying the glue back and forth like that. I think that could be really interesting. Um, Starting here, this is kind of an interesting start, and I would recommend doing about 3 times as many of these dots with the runs in it, so we can get that texture. Here and there, putting dots here and there is not a texture, but doing this so that they're next to each other and really building that up, that becomes a texture. Right here, same kind of thing. I would do a lot more lines of the glue, and that would build the texture up. Maybe take some of these buttons off and put them in all the buttons in one area, like over here. That could do it. A feather here and there is not texture, but a whole bunch of feathers on top of each other, that develops a texture. A whole bunch of buttons that they touch each other, so they're next to each other, that develops a texture. So I think that this is a really good start. I would recommend that the person puts more into it, as we've talked about. I think it's a great start, and I do really like the way that they painted this. I think it's really an interesting thing because they're conscious of the different nature of the colors or the different colors of the different materials they started applying to this. But as it is, that I think they do need to do more to build these areas up so they become textures, because right now it's decorated. It doesn't have textures on it. And I know we talked about that last week as well, and I gave some examples. of that. So that is a really excellent start. So keep going with that and put more into it. I think it'll be fantastic. And this is one of the reasons why I do, when I start seeing these things come in, I hesitate to grade right away until everybody is seeing it and you can see what I'm seeing. All right, now this next object is an object that we originally saw last week um, as the carving, and now they've added texture to it. So I want to share this because I think this is really fascinating. All right, notice the photography. They did it on the infinity screen. It looks like they used the lab, which is great. You don't have to use the lab. You can use um, a sheet at home. But in any case, we don't have that horizontal line, and they did a great job photographing it. And I like even what they did with the pedestal. They put some gold on the pedestal, some gold yarn or string or something like that, and spray painting the whole thing gold. That's great. And what I really like is that is echoed through here. Now, to get the coloring that they did on this, they made a whole bunch of these scale type things, and they made them out of several different colors of paper, I'm assuming, and they used that and put it on specifically so that the color shifts from pink, goes through a little bit of a rainbow, goes up to green. And I think that that is fantastic. And typically I don't like only having one texture, but they kind of have attached the pedestal, or connected, they have definitely connected the pedestal with the object with that gold cord going through. And so we can see that there is there are different textures there. And I think it's fascinating too that what they use for the scales, I don't know if they painted or what the scales, but the scales each have a different texture as well. I think that is absolutely fascinating. I think this is a really good example of somebody applying a texture and then following through with the whole thing. And I told you before, I don't like single strands of yarn or something like that, but to make a texture out of it. The fact that they covered the entire thing with the texture and then put this gold yarn on it, I think that that makes it really, really fascinating. And I think it makes the exception to the rule work. I think that this one, I think, is working really good. That is really fascinating to me. Now, if this was all one color, I would not like it. If the base was just the foam, the purple foam, I would not like it. They've taken a lot of care and thought into this. There's a lot of work that went into it. The each of the scales has its own texture, and the scales themselves make a texture. I think that this one worked out really well. I think it turned out successful. Okay, let's see if there's any more submissions. So I think that turned out really well. I'm quiet because I'm trying to get this image to show up correctly. Okay, here we go. Now this next one, I think, is really going in a good direction. I think it needs a little bit added to it, but I think it's looking really good. Okay, this is really interesting to me. The person painted the whole thing black, and then their texture is applying color to it. Notice they did an infinity screen at home, and this works as a photo. I think that that's great. What I'm feeling though that this is still not quite a texture. This is things glued on the surface. And what I would say for this one is get more of these things. Get as much of these things as you can, and build that texture up so it covers the entire wall of this, and we have several layers going through. That would do it. That would give it a texture. Right now, it still feels like these things are just mounted on top, but get more of them, glue them on, layer them, and this will be fantastic. I I think that will really work. The color scheme is more like the tetradic color scheme in your quiz, or the um, I forget what it's called, where you're trying purposely not to have a color scheme. I think that works as well. The only issue that I have with this is, or that the texture needs to be followed through. I think this would look fantastic if you just layer the stuff on, cover the whole thing so it feels like fur coming out. So get a lot more of these, glue them on, layer them on. That would do it. I think. I think that would be really interesting. I think this could also be interesting by using a sponge and painting different shades of gray around here. I think that could be really interesting, doing that around the edge. But definitely um, glue more of this stuff on. I think that starts an interesting texture. We have these little things going on. We have these things feel different. Maybe even take a lot more of these black ones and use that as one texture with just shades with just black pieces, and then apply use these in a different area and just layer and layer and layer so it starts to look like fur. And I think that would go a long way in making and pushing this towards being successful. I think that's a very interesting idea. All right, so I hope that thank you again for the brave people that submitted their stuff. That gives us something to talk about, and we have more to talk about on Wednesday when we look at it. I am going through, I am grading stuff. If anybody has any questions at all, text me or email me, and I will get back to you right away so we can answer your questions. But again, we have the rest of this week, and we have next week up to Friday for the quizzes and the discussions. That's very important to get those done on Canvas right away before they close. And then after that, if you need more time, we do have a couple more days, and you can email me the assignments that are not quizzes or discussions. All right. But thank you very much for joining me. That's all I needed to cover today. Um, I'm sorry we don't have anybody here to talk back and forth or answer questions or ask questions or anything like that. We It's just me tonight, so it's kind of boring. But that does have the benefit of making this shorter. And I'm really impressed with the caliber of stuff that people are turning in. I've seen some really great stuff done. So get your peer and self critiques done. Get your PowerPoint finished, your annotated bibliography, all that stuff. Submit everything you possibly can. Get those submitted and turned in, and then resubmit whatever you need to. Look at the discussions so you can see what other people are turning in as well, because people are starting to turn in the Cocoon stuff and the Readymade stuff. Get that turned in. We need to get that turned in this weekend, all those, so we can look at them again next week. Get all that stuff turned in. So submit, submit, submit. Again, if you need more time past Friday, let me know, but you can email stuff that are not discussions or quizzes. Discussions and quizzes must be turned in through Canvas system before next Friday. All right, get everything turned in. And what I think you guys will find as you turn stuff in, that your grade is going to go up higher and higher and higher, and you'll be pretty amazed. I did have a student, and I know I've shared the story with you before. His parents were both sick with COVID. He wasn't able to do much during the semester. But then towards the end of the semester, started turning his stuff in. He told me he was just going to take the F and move on. I said, no, turn the stuff in that you've gotten. And in the same amount of time between now and next Friday night, that same period of time, he turned in all this stuff and he brought his grade up to an A minus. So turn it in. The SRIs, you guys turn those in. You should have an email but also you can go to your um, what's it called, the student interface or something like that, your Wolverine page. Go to that, and I believe it's on the top right hand corner. We'll tell you about the SRIs, but you can also do SRI as a search in your email. Find that email link, click on it, and do it. I never see those, so it doesn't. I'm not going to have my feelings hurt. And on the other side of that, I won't feel really good about myself either if you have positive things to say. Do that, then submit a screenshot of the receipt page, and then I can give you the 2% extra credit. 3 of the people in this class have already done that. Just go ahead and finish it up to take care of that. Submit, resubmit, take care of things. If you need to resubmit after tonight's lesson, go ahead and do that. Um, like I said, I'm going to be grading today and tomorrow. I will get everything graded that is submitted by tomorrow afternoon. And then if you guys have any questions or anything like that, email me or text me and we can set up a time to do FaceTime. I've already done that with a couple of students, and it really helped them to understand what was going on. Well, thank you very much for the time you have taken to watch this through, and I really appreciate having you in the class. We're going to do this one more time next week, and next week the final is going to go live late Sunday night. I will start emailing everybody about it. If you have any questions, let me know. But submit and resubmit and get credit for the work that you've done. You guys are all exceptional artists, and I'm so glad that you're in the class. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing whoever can show up next Wednesday. Have a good week and a great weekend.